I'm Jericho Brown and I'm a poet, which means that I use language to say what goes unsaid. I grew up in a situation where I wasn't allowed to speak. And because I couldn't speak, what I could do is write. And writing has always been important to me because it allowed me an opportunity to have a place where I put what I thought of as the truth. And I think poetry creates for us opportunities to construct the truth as we see it. And it allows us an opportunity to see ourselves free, to visualize ourselves differently from how we might see ourselves in the world. I first became interested in poetry when I was a kid. My mother would drop me and my sister off at the library. She's an improvisational genius. She didn't think she had to pay for childcare because she knew that there were books, and that as long as there were books, there would be plenty of things for us to do. She also knew that the books were free. As long as we brought them back, we didn't have to pay for them. And she also knew that there would be people there. To this day, I have a huge amount of respect for librarians because whether they knew it or not, they were my babysitters when I was growing up. And they were the people who led me to poetry. I fell in love with poetry because it was short, it was brief. I would see the text on the page and there would be this much text. And so when I got through a page, I felt like, oh, I can do this. I'm accomplished. Whereas when I looked at prose and it would be the whole page, I felt so intimidated. So I was probably 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old when I was first encountering the poems of people like Emily Dickinson and Walt Whitman, Sylvia Plath, Anne Sexton, Robert Lowell, Rita Dove, Yusuf Komunyakaa. I was reading Phyllis Wheatley when I was very young. I wasn't really understanding the poems, but I was reading them and enjoying them for the music of language. And I think that early education in poetry that in many ways I gave to myself was an opportunity just for me to get through books in a disinterested manner and to enjoy language without trying to assign meaning to each and everything. It helped me understand that when we see beauty in the world, we don't ask beauty what it means. I think being a Black gay man in 2017 in particular really has to be about compassion. And the first compassion has to be for oneself. I think we're now in the midst of a chance to be kind, not just to one another, but to ourselves. There's so many stories that are told about us. And there are so many stories that, because of those stories told about us, there's so many stories that we tell ourselves. And they're simply not true. And I think now more than ever, we need to strengthen ourselves. There's always an onslaught. There's always a war against Black people all over the world, not just in this country. And we know that, we see that. That's not up for question among Black folk. And I think for Black gay men in particular, because we often feel like outsiders in our own families, not all the time, but often. I think what we have to do is learn to take care of ourselves in order to be able to take care of one another. That we have to learn to tell ourselves that we're okay. We have to learn to tell ourselves that we're physically beautiful no matter what we look like. We have to learn to tell ourselves that we're capable, that we can get through a day. We have to learn to make ourselves proud by looking at all the things that we've done that we can be proud of. And I think that's the kind of thing that challenges us right now. And I think through doing that, and I mean this quite literally, through the exercise of looking in the mirror and every day finding something nice to say about yourself, right? I find it interesting that so many of my friends, they want to be in love. They won't say anything nice about themselves. And when you tell them to, they think that's weird, they think that's strange. But you can't really expect people to love you in ways that you haven't loved yourself. We got to learn to love ourselves. We can't fight any kind of political fight if we don't indeed believe in ourselves, if we don't indeed believe in what we're fighting for. And what we're fighting for is our very souls. There are so many, and there are so many that we even tell to one another. For instance, we've got to a point where we're allowing capitalism to define what success is for us, when indeed we're actually very aware that people have been happy without owning mansions. People have indeed lived very happy lives without having 3 Bugattis. Do you know what I mean? And somehow or another, though, something about social media, something about television, something about the music we listen to has led us to really buy into this belief that if you are not completely invested in capitalism in a way that values money and property over everything else, then you're not indeed a successful human being. This is hugely problematic for Black folk who don't have money and property. Who, if we use money and property to call ourselves valuable, then what are we saying about ourselves? You have to have something to be whole. You have to own something to be a human being. No, I don't think that's the case. So that's one thing that I think we got trouble with. I also think we have trouble with masculinity, whatever the hell that is. Everybody's working with 27 different definitions of it, none of which are helping anybody. The real question I have isn't whether or not a person is masculine enough to be seen with. It's that if something's going on and I'm in trouble, can you help me out? And I really don't care how you walk or how much twist is in your walk or not in your walk. I just need the help that I need when I'm in dire straits. And I need to be able to give that to you, no matter what your walk is like. I need to be able to use that opportunity. I need to be able to be blessed by the chance to help you out. What brings me joy? This is harder to characterize because I know what it is, but I think I just like to see change happen in front of my face. Like I like to be able to look back on my own life and remember certain things that I was worried about, and to think in present tense about how that was not that big of a deal. How I used to be worried about certain things and how now some of the things that I used to be really stressed out about are second nature, easy things to do now. And that helps me, knowing that I can get through, that I've gotten through things, helps me really put into perspective the stuff that I'm losing my mind about now. Because I know 5 years from now, I'll be looking at that like, I did that. And it's good to get time behind you. If you can get time behind you, then it makes the present tense so much easier. And that brings me joy. I really feel, people aren't supposed to say it, I guess, but I feel really proud of myself. I feel like I made it. And I feel like that feeling can only grow. I feel like 20 years from now, when I look at now, I'm going to say, I really made it. And I think that's what we have to keep looking at. We need to keep looking at how we're alive. And then somehow, over and over again, we keep on making it.